Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from the Shanti Stupa in Leh. I'm Gaurav Sawant. India had hoped for peace. India hopes for peace with China. But what India gets is treachery and deceit. 8 months after the Galwan clash, China has released a video of the Galwan clash hours after claiming 4 Chinese soldiers had been awarded posthumously and 5 in all for gallantry. China, despite being the aggressor, is trying to show itself as a victim in the Galwan clashes that took place on June 15, 2020, when 20 braves of the Indian Army, led by Colonel Santosh Babu, made the supreme sacrifice of their lives defending our territory from Chinese aggression. Take a look at this propaganda video put out by the Chinese, and then I'll get you details. India Today will expose Chinese deceit and Chinese treachery.
After fake claim, now face-saving video. China unveils video of Galwan clash. First footage of the Galwan incident. China using this clip to hide its dead. China frets and fumes over Galwan toll. China wants you to think it won Galwan. Global embarrassment for Chinese army. Pullback in Pangong, propaganda max. India lost 20 heroes and admitted freely. Russia says China lost 45 and it hides. Stunning video stunt to hide its dead. Top focus on India First.
Joining me now on India First is Executive Editor Shiv Arur. Shiv, the timing of this Chinese video is extremely crucial. Just hours before the 10th round of Corps Commander talks between India and China. Also, days after the Russian agency TASS brought out a report about 45 Chinese military fatalities in the Galwan clashes. What do you make of the video and the timing of the release of this video?
Well, you know, Gaurav, this video has been put out by China just hours after they, came out with a statement saying that they were honoring 4 dead soldiers from the Galwan clash. But this is being seen as, just something for their domestic audience, because after Russia completely outed them, not India, but Russia, which is their, close ally and strategic friend, outed the fact that 45 casualties had been suffered by China in the Galwan clash. China was forced to do some troubleshooting, for domestic consumption, because there would be anger building, and therefore they had to put out that statement, and then they had to release this video also to bolster and try and look they were like they were in control, of what happened, and also reinforce their original claim that India was the aggressor and that China somehow taught India a lesson, when it is just the opposite that is the case. It's something that does not hold muster at all, because Russia is China's friend and they've independently put out this figure. So that's something that's obviously very, very glaring. The video that the Chinese have put out, obviously edited, very much part of information warfare, is the first footage. Let's admit that. It's the first footage of the Galwan clash itself. Within India, nobody's taking this very seriously within the military, because there are a crucial round of talks that are coming up tomorrow. There is the next phase of disengagement that's going to happen. So the assessment within the security establishment is this is for the China's internal consumption, for their domestic audiences, because of the emotions connected there. But at the end of the day, not acknowledging the dead is something that China has done before as well. So the Indian army is not giving it very much importance, and I don't think it will have that much of an impact on the talks.
Deceit and treachery appear to be China's middle name. Hours before the 10th round of Corps Commanders talks for disengagement at Gogra, Hot Spring, Galwan and Depsang, China released information about 5 Chinese soldiers being awarded gallantry medals, 4 posthumously, for the Galwan clash on June 15, 2020. The timing of this video has raised many eyebrows. It comes 8 days after Russian state media, TASS, issued a report with a Beijing dateline that talked about 45 Chinese military fatalities in the Galwan clashes in the run-up to the disengagement. Take a look at this report. Abhishek Bhalla and I get you this report.
Eight months after the deadly clash in Ladakh's Galwan Valley, 8 months after India publicly told the world it had lost 20 army heroes, including a commanding officer. After 8 months of China dodging and ducking any conversation about its own casualty figures, the country was forced to dive into emergency damage control mode today. In an apparent breaking of silence, the Chinese government today announced that it had honored 4 martyrs in Galwan, as if to suggest that only 4 army men had died in the clash on June 15th last year.
Now, the PLA Daily has published a report on the incident to reveal the truth. I think it is good for the people to understand the truth and the right and the wrong of the incident, which is also a proper tribute to the heroic martyrs defending the country.
But China's announcement isn't really an announcement at all, but rather a fumbling attempt to troubleshoot after being exposed by its own close ally and friend, Russia. Just 9 days ago, Russian government-owned news agency TASS published with categorical clarity that the Chinese side had lost 45 soldiers in Galwan, a figure never previously published. This was followed by India's Northern Army commander endorsing the figure on the record and even suggesting that the number could be higher.
While China has been dismissing Indian claims as propaganda by the Indian army, it could not dodge what its old ally Russia had to say, and especially when the claim now comes from a Russian government agency. It was almost as if Vladimir Putin made an announcement to the world that 45 Chinese army men were killed in Galwan.
And that is the context of today's burst of damage control propaganda by China. But there are 2 more points to consider.
Chinese state-owned propaganda machinery and media had earlier claimed they did not make public the casualty figures in China because they did not want to embarrass India previously. But the naked truth is, embarrassing India is exactly what China's agenda has been throughout in Ladakh.
And finally, no matter what the final figure of Chinese fatal casualties in Galwan is, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that the number cannot, under any circumstances, be less than 16. That was the number of confirmed Chinese dead recorded by the Indian Army at the clash site on that very day, and duly recorded in an official situation report. 8 months after the Galwan clash, a bleeding reminder of a terrible escalation during disengagement, China proving once again that propaganda will always be a priority. With Abhishek Bhalla in Delhi and Gaurav Sawant in Leh, Ladakh, Bureau Report, India Today.
Some of the finest minds who understand China now join me on the broadcast. I have Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Fire and Fury co-commander, joining me on the show. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash joins me on the show for a diplomatic perspective, and Professor Brahma Chilani has been studying China very closely. And if I may begin with you, Professor Brahma Chilani, in your appreciation, why did China come out with the figure of 4 Chinese soldiers dead at Galwan today, 8 months after the incident? And why only 4 and not 45 as the Russian agency TASS put out, sir?
Well, first, let's understand that the combat deaths that China suffered in June were the first combat deaths since the 1979 Vietnamese invasion by China. So these combat deaths were a national humiliation for China. And the contrast between India publicly honoring its fallen, holding large public funerals and China concealing all information on its casualties could not have been starker. The second thing we have to bear in mind is that the Chinese Communist Party, its culture of secrecy is such that they never reveal the full truth. Their usual pattern is to reveal pieces of information months later, even years later. So what they have revealed today is only the first bit of information. More pieces of information they will reveal in subsequent months, but they will never reveal the true picture. They will never come out with the full truth.
Okay, but this is hugely embarrassing. It's a national embarrassment for China. As you say, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, in your appreciation, the Russians are considered very close to the Chinese. They, of course, are also very dear friends of ours. Why would TASS put out a report at the time of disengagement about 45 Chinese fatalities as against 20 Indian in the Galwan clashes with a Beijing Dateline report?
That remains a mystery. I have also been wondering, Gaurav, why do they do that? Given the relationship that they have, given the character of TASS, it's a mouthpiece of the government. Why did they do that remains a mystery. But as Brahma mentioned, our Chinese friends believe that whatever they say is truth. They are never known to have been speaking or saying the factual position. They believe that they have the mandate from heaven. And how can a country which has a mandate from heaven do anything wrong? We all remember how Wang Yi, with a straight face, said that in 5,000 years of Chinese history, they have never been aggressive. That is China for you.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. That's China for us, a country that lies with a straight face, lies to its own people, lies to the world. But General, if I may, you've been posted across China. You've dealt with the Chinese. A blow to China when at least 45 of their soldiers were killed in combat in Galwan. China now acknowledges four very snarky comments in Chinese social media saying they did not want to embarrass India by giving out these figures earlier. Why did they give out these figures now? Were they under pressure after the TASS report saying 45 Chinese soldiers were killed? Is there another reason? Just before the 10th round of talks, China says 4 of their soldiers were killed at Galwan.
Thank you, Gaurav. In 1962, the casualties that the Chinese had were actually declassified internally in history documents of China in only 1994. And those was also grossly underplayed. The casualties that the Chinese had in Vietnam in 1979 have actually not been declassified as yet. So that's the system that the country works. You see the statement given today by the foreign ministry spokesman in China, and she says that we have shown high restraint to de-escalate the situation, and we did not unveil the casualties to maintain relations between the two militaries. Now, I do not know whether it is related to TASS or it's related to anything else. But one fact is that all these 5 casualties, the regimental commander and 4 others, were actually been awarded. So I am not very sure that they are saying there are only 5 casualties. They are saying 5 awards being given to these people. Whether this is the finite number of casualties, and one is not very sure. So it comes to light because there have been awards given to these 5, and it's been so accordingly declassified.
Very interesting. The fact that China, Professor Brahmachalani says, India was the aggressor or a foreign military was the aggressor. We went across. Nothing could be further from the truth. So are the Chinese lying to their own people? And if they've acknowledged only 4 or 5 recognition, what about the others? If 40 died, would there not be heartburn in their families? Would they be able to raise the issue? Or in a communist China, nobody dare ask questions.
Well, after the clashes happened and the Indians honored their fallen, Chinese social media accounts criticized Xi Jinping's regime. Those on social media contrasted India's honoring of its martyrs with China's refusal to even recognize its fallen. Yet for so many months, Xi Jinping's regime suppressed all information on the Chinese casualties. As the general was pointing out, the Chinese revealed their 1962 casualties in 1994 when they published a white paper. So this is the pattern. Truth and the CCP don't go together. In fact, truth is antithetical to the Chinese political culture. If you recall what happened in the hand-to-hand combat on June 15th, that was triggered by a PLA ambush of an Indian Army patrol. The Indians were outnumbered, and yet they fought back, and the fearlessness and bravery of India's soldiers was highlighted by the swift cost they imposed on PLA troops in the Galwan Valley. They demonstrated the true mark of valor. And I think after those clashes, the Chinese realized that they should do everything possible to prevent further combat with Indian soldiers, because most of these Chinese soldiers, they have had no experience of combat, and they know that the Indian forces are battle-hardened, that they are quite accustomed to functioning and to operating in high altitudes.
Okay.
And thereafter, the focus of the Chinese has been on creating buffer zones with India. So in the Galwan Valley, they managed to create a buffer zone, and now in the Pangong, they have succeeded in creating a buffer zone with India.
Professor Brahmachalani, since you mentioned the valor of the Indian soldiers and the treachery of the Chinese at Galwan, let me just quickly play out a reaction of Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi, Army Commander, Northern Command. I spoke to him about the Galwan operations and the casualties, where he very specifically said that India and China almost came close to war. The balloon almost went up after Galwan, and also when India did the QPQ or quid pro quo operations on the south bank of Pangong. So let's listen in to General Joshi. You were here. I saw you in Ladakh so many times at the height of the standoff, and immediately after that, August 29. Was there an apprehension, General, that the balloon could go up? Was there an apprehension that there would now be a shooting war?
Yeah, there was a situation, there were many situations, in fact, especially post-Galwan, the army was given absolute free hand. You heard it, the Prime Minister saying absolutely clearly. And once we launched the, quid pro quo actions and we went and occupied Zangla Shinla, the amount of armor and mechanized forces we moved on the ridgeline. And then, the PLA reacted once they got the UDA cycle right. And then when their armor was sort of moving up and we had our red lines, absolutely clearly drawn, that was the time the moment was very, very tense. Balloon could have gone up any time. And it is the maturity, actually, of the Indian Army, the soldier who's sitting on the ground, with his rocket launcher, and the tank man with his, gunner, and the crosshairs, he sees the adversary's tank coming up, close to him. The easiest thing he has to do is press the trigger and open fire, which is a no-brainer, that is what we're taught in our training institutions, But to not press the trigger is what requires courage and maturity and grit and determination, And that is a time when we were able to stop him, without sort of opening fire.
So he's getting that message that India is now going to stand up and India will defend every inch of our territory.
Correct.
That's the message you've been able to convey.
That message, absolutely, he's got it absolutely loud and clear.
So India has been able to convey that message to China that we will defend every inch of our territory. But General Sharma, the balloon almost went up after Galwan and after QPQ. Was China actually looking at war, or was China playing a very dangerous game of brinkmanship?
I do not know whether they were playing a game of brinkmanship. The fact of the matter is that the tanks climbed up from the road to Moldo, the Rudok-Moldo road, and climbed up towards Zangla, Rechingla, which is a gradual slope, while our tanks were facing each other, and the infantry was following them. If the same instances happened on the western front by the Pakistanis or on the international border, we would have hit with the artillery at the longest range. We would have hit by the tanks at the longest range possible, including by the missiles being fired by the tanks, and it would have been a long standoff. Nowhere, it's the rarest of the rarest events when the tanks came face to face with 100 meters of each other. It's not happened. It doesn't happen in the war because you actually push the enemy as far away as possible. So there was immense amount of fire control shown by us. It was also, while the gunners are important and the troops are important, it's the commanders on the ground who do not lose their nerve. They held on to their nerve. They were confident that even if the armor comes so close and infantry comes so close, they will be able to hold on to the situation and carry the day.
Professor Chilani, in your appreciation, when the tanks were rolling up, and we saw those images, Professor Chilani, of Indian and Chinese tanks barely 100 meters, in some instances 75 meters from each other, and the barrels pointed at each other. In your appreciation, was China playing a game of brinkmanship, or the balloon could actually have gone up, sir?
Well, China's strategy for the last 4 decades has been to achieve its military objectives short of war. So they have been waging a bulletless aggression against their neighbors. And we saw how the Ladakh encroachments happened last April. Xi Jinping exploited the COVID-19 pandemic. He thought that this was an ideal opportunity to make quick progress on his expansionist agenda. So last April, he directed the PLA to launch furtive incursions into the icy borderlands of Ladakh. But it's clear that Xi Jinping's decision was a strategic miscalculation. Without the element of surprise, China is not in a position to dominate India in a military confrontation. India has one of the world's largest and most experienced mountain warfare armies. So they were trying to coerce India. They were trying to intimidate India without starting a war. But India stood up to China and refused to budge.
That's a very, very big signal that India sent out. And I've had the privilege, I've had the honor of interacting with some of the commanders on ground, not just the army commander, the corps commander, the div commanders and the brigade commanders, but also down to some of the battalion commanders on ground over the course of the last 1 year, when we were reporting and when India Today became the first channel in the world to get to Daulat Beg Oldie at the height of the India-China standoff. And this very clearly shows, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, that the whole of India approach, whether it's our army, our air force, our navy, our foreign policy, our diplomats, everyone seemed to work together. But sir, are we still very close to a very treacherous neighbor who may once again try and do something else because it's not accepted or it's not respected any of the agreements in the past? How do we know it'll accept the current disengagement agreement? We still haven't seen any de-escalation or de-induction, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash.
Gaurav, absolutely right. We are still not sure. We are speculating, all of us, as to why China did what it did. After 40 years of CBM were torn up. You don't do these things in a hurry. Their perfidy, their treachery is very well known. Now, even today, I don't think it's a change of heart, it's a change of tactics. They have realized, and you may have seen a Global Times story of the 7th of February, which advocates that given the fact that China has opened too many fronts, it is time to start to make peace so that the U.S. does not bring all of them together to gang up against China. So this is very much tactical. Okay. Let me also remind our viewers that in July 1962, Chinese had withdrawn troops from Galwan. And we thought that, they have blinked, but they came back. So I think we have to remain very vigilant. We have to remain very careful because we can see an entree any day again, any time of their choosing.
Oh, absolutely. But this time the Indian Army is ready. And that's another conversation that I had with the Army commander where he said that rebalancing of forces will take place in the northern borders. There is much more deployment now. But before I come to that point and before I bring in General Rakesh Sharma once again, Professor Brahmachalani had raised the point about the valor of our forces, the fact that if China cannot take the adversary by surprise, it does not get into war. But look at how India stayed ahead of China and how India took China by surprise. Listening to the army commander as he gives details about how India outgunned China. Take a look at this reaction of his. If we were to talk about what's happening on the south bank of Pangong, so we are told it's a brilliant operation, and give us some details about how you planned that operation on the night of 29th and 30th of August to occupy the Kailash ranges. Are we giving in too much by us vacating the Kailash ranges and he's only going beyond Finger 8?
Again, this was the turning point of the entire snow leopard, the entire event that are happening in Eastern Ladakh. Prior to 29th and 30th of August, 5 Corps Commander level flag meetings had been held and we were going nowhere. So I got directions from my chief that we need to, create some leverage so that then we can exert pressure on the PLA and then, get the negotiations into a favorable position. And once these operations were, conducted, we were able to totally surprise the PLA on the Razangra Chinla complex, on the south bank, and even on the north bank, where we occupied areas which are dominating the entire PLA deployment on the area of Finger 4 and in the area behind Finger 4 as well, right up to Finger 8.
Did he expect it?
He did not expect it.
He didn't expect it
He
at all?
was totally surprised, and his OODA loop, what we call, the observe, orient, direct and sort of act was, went into haywire. Initially we launched on the south bank. While he was reacting to that, we launched on the Razangra Chinla complex. Thereafter, when he was reacting to that, the same night, on the night of 30th, we launched the operation on the north bank of Pangong. And even, the further north 2 passes of Kiula Anila went occupied. So he actually did not know what is happening and was totally surprised. And the credit of this operation, goes to each and every soldier, the great determination, the junior leaders, who had planned this in a manner that we were able to achieve complete surprise.
General Sharma, that's indeed very heartening to hear that China's OODA loop, after the initial surprise when the Chinese troops came in, subsequently, after August 29-30, China's OODA loop went completely haywire. So are we on top of the situation in your appreciation, sir? Especially when the army commander also talks about Kila Anila, peaks that not many are aware of, that we dominate even to date.
So, Gaurav, the fact of the matter is that while we launched operations on 2 sides of this Pangur Gap and we occupied heights, we also occupied Kula Anila. Kula Anila is over 18,000 feet. They are actually much higher than the heights of Gurung Hill and Magar Hill or Zangla or Rechingla. And they are mostly snow-clad for the year. So to do that must have turned, because you then overlook the Rudok garrison. It gives you vision that far. So, what makes would make an immense amount of difference. And I would also state here that while we are the very important operation carried out in Kailash range, there are many such opportunities available to us and many such plans available to us to do many other things in life. So then, the Chinese must be cautious of the fact that it's not the end all of a disengagement in this area. We have the capacities and we have the plans, and now we have the reserves duly acclimatized and positioned in the Ladakh plateau. We don't have to bank on moving people from planes and acclimatize them over 10-15 days. So there is a dramatic shift that has happened in the course of last 8-9 months.
A dramatic shift that has happened in the course of the last 8-9 months. And Professor Brahmachalani, this dramatic shift that has happened, has this made China wiser? Or will China, being China, try something else? Maybe not in Ladakh, maybe in Arunachal Pradesh, maybe in Sikkim, maybe in the middle sector in Barahoti, or a cyber attack. Will China take these 9 months as a humiliation of China, perhaps for the first time after 1979? Not only have they lost soldiers, they've also had to retreat, sir.
China is a very sly and cunning enemy. One has to bear in mind what happened in 2017 when the disengagement deal on Doklam was done. The Indians withdrew. The Chinese gave the impression of withdrawing, but they did the exact opposite. They actually brought in reinforcements and occupied Doklam. We refused to learn any lesson from Doklam. That's the reason why the Chinese surprised us with these land grabs last April. So we have to be very careful now. And I think this spin that we are seeing over the Pangong deal is so misplaced, because we should not do a repeat of what happened in Doklam in August 2017. The Chinese are going to come back. The Chinese are not building this military infrastructure all along the Himalayas for nothing. They are setting up border villages. They're setting up new air bases.
Absolutely.
They're setting up electronic stations all along the Himalayan frontier with India. The idea is to pin India down under sustained military pressure. They will create new disputes elsewhere. Even in Pangong, they might come back one day and surprise us. So we have a very powerful and cunning enemy, and I think surrendering our leverage by withdrawing from the Kailash Heights is something that we might regret later. So we have to be very vigilant and be very careful.
Okay.
Because this is only the first step of a long process, and this process could actually backfire on India.
Oh, okay. So you're absolutely right that this is only disengagement and it's only happening in one area. We still have to see disengagement in other areas, and then de-induction, and then, de-escalation and de-induction. But Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, you concur. It's a very sly neighbor. It's a cunning neighbor, a powerful neighbor. It's building military infrastructure. So our forces are here to stay in Ladakh for long. And this is a dispute that will last a fairly long time, no matter how sweet are the words that come from Beijing.
Gaurav, there is more to it. Hitherto, China used to acknowledge that there is a boundary, there is a difference in perception. This time, they have couched it in terms of protecting their sovereignty. I think we should take very careful note of that. Now, if it is protecting their safeguarding their sovereignty and their territorial integrity, we know what their designs are. And they will do what it takes. The conversation between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping is very instructive. When Joe Biden talks to Xi Jinping about preserving a free and open Indo-Pacific region and cautions against assertiveness of China, aggression of China, Xi Jinping again says that let us jointly safeguard the peace and stability of the Asia-Pacific region. They are trying again to revive G2. That is one. But all around, they want to maintain their supremacy and they want to embarrass India. There is no doubt about that. The big thing that has happened is that they were expecting a walkover. That has not happened. They know that India will give them a befitting reply, but they will not give up. I think that is one thing that we have to always remember.
Okay, of course, there's the 10th round of talks that's going to happen at the Chushul Moldo BPM. But before I come to that point about the 10th round and what will happen there, General, your appreciation, you heard both Professor Brahmachilani and Ambassador Vishnu Prakash on the sly, cunning neighbor that we have. Is this disengagement then just to lull us, and then perhaps quite like in 1962 when it withdrew from Galwan and 3 months later we saw the 62 conflict? 3 months later, could this still be a very hot summer, sir?
Yes, Gaurav, there is merit in the argument being given out. The issue is that there is a distrust, and as much as we distrust sitting in Delhi and elsewhere, similar amount of distrust would be happening in the commanders and the troops on ground. So when they tend to vacate an area or disengage an area of South Pangong, so it must be in their minds that there will be duplicity on the part of the Chinese, because that's the system that they work in. So alternatives would have been planned. Which we well understood the Chinese may not, even the 10th round, after the 10th round, may not want to progress on other areas, or may come and surprise us on either side of the Pangong, so despite the verification regime. So all these options should have been worked out, and let's grant it to our people who are in uniform that they would have worked this out. I wish to add one more point. See, there is an important issue brought up by Mr. Chani. Yes. The villages that are being resettled along the border, the figure some say 2.5 lakh people and nomads, they call it nomads, being settled all along the borders, including in Nepal and Bhutan. So who are these nomads who are being brought into this area? Also, the G216, which is a parallel road being made to G219 with axials connecting G219. Now, all this is material changes happening in. And the last point I wish to make is that they found a zinc and lead mountain, something called Hoshuan or something, in Exciton proper, in the Lindsay Plains. So, they are going to establish a township or something like that, start exploiting minerals like they're doing in Gilgit-Baltistan. They'll do the same thing in Exciton. They will change the character of the region of Exciton much more because of this exploitation of this mountain they found of great minerals.
And that is why India needs to be very careful of this sly neighbor of ours. So we have the 10th round of talks that's coming up. Lieutenant General P.G.K. Menon on the Indian side, Major General Liu Lin from the Chinese side. A team from the Ministry of External Affairs has flown into Leh. Now this 10th round is all about the other friction points from Depsang to Demchok. Principally, the focus will remain on Gogra Hot Spring and Depsang, and Army Commander Northern Command General Y.K. Joshi told me that Depsang appears to be the trickiest because there the perception difference at the LAC is the maximum.
"100% successful. Phase 1 of the India-China disengagement at Ladakh's Pangong sector completed to the satisfaction of both sides. But with decks cleared for the next phase of pullback, the true challenge of the standoff stares us in the face. While the pullback in Pangong, Ladakh has become the face of the de-escalation, the aggressive Chinese military posture 200 kilometers to the north in Ladakh's Depsang area remains the real proverbial mountain to climb. While the 2020 standoff in eastern Ladakh was restricted to the Galwan Valley, Hot Springs, Gogra Posts and Pangong So's banks, the Chinese were clearly building up prominently near Depsang in an effort to create a new front. Depsang is a sensitive sector. It was here, back in 2013, that the Chinese army intruded several kilometers across the line of actual control into Indian-controlled territory and squatted for many weeks. It took a concerted diplomatic push to dislodge what was then a clear attempt to change the status quo just south of the sensitive Karakoram Pass.
Depsang remains the trickiest because, as Army Commander Lieutenant General Y.K. Joshi told India Today in an exclusive interview, the perception difference in the LAC is maximum in Depsang. At this point of time, we do not have massive troops amassed on either side, but the Chinese patrols prevent the Indian patrols from going up to patrol points or India's claim line, and the Indian patrols prevent the Chinese from going up to their claim line.
Currently, situation is not volatile there. There are no troops, amassed on the other side like we were, sitting here on the North Bank and South Bank and Razangna Chinla. So it has been agreed as one of the friction points, and post the disengagement that is happening now, we will sit down and discuss and resolve that issue as well.
Just months ago, India Today accessed the first clear visual evidence of the Chinese army's concerted mobilization in areas close to Depsang and Daulat Begoldi sectors. Satellite photographs from European space assets contain visible evidence of the Chinese build-up that remains to this day. Depsang has become a sector where the two armies are now deployed in some of the most prominent strength in this standoff, including with tank regiments, motorized columns and artillery. Fresh Chinese deployments near Depsang since late August include an additional artillery brigade, field hospital and a complement of vehicle-mounted tactical communication jammers. While both sides remain on their side of the LAC in Depsang, attempts to block patrols have taken place since late May, with the Indian Army mounting its own localized movements to apply counter pressure on Chinese patrols. While phase 1 of the Ladakh disengagement will undoubtedly inspire confidence, the disengagement in Depsang could be the true proof of China's pullback pudding. With Gaurav Sawant in Leh, Bureau Report, India Today.
Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, now that China has got India to vacate the south bank of Pangong Tso, will China dilly-dally when it comes to Depsang, Gogra and Hot Spring, or do you expect solid forward movement in the 10th round of talks for disengagement and then ultimately perhaps de-escalation and de-induction?
Gaurav, on the one hand, we have our experience with SR talks and we know how they have been dilly-dallying, and now they have reached a stage when they tell us that questions left by history should be sorted out by history. So that is one aspect of it. The second is that one thing that the Chinese fear the most is unrest. And that is one of the reasons why they are very wary of giving out numbers of the people that have died. Their army is comprised of conscripts, and they have veterans, which are about 57 million. And there are reports that the veterans are quite upset, that there are concerns. Now, it all depends on the Chinese calculus. If they feel that prolonging the conflict or prolonging the dispute, reviving the dispute will cause social unrest, other difficulties, or the international pressure is such that they do not want to deal with, then I think they will de-escalate and they will disengage. If not, it could go either way. Bottom line is, I don't trust the Chinese, and they will do what they perceive to be national interest. But Gaurav, last point, in totalitarian regimes, perhaps good news is what they want to give, and the factual things are hidden. I hope they don't overplay their hand, but they're quite capable of.
Perhaps then every Indian needs to realize, and this needs to be etched in our DNA, that Chinese are not to be trusted, and that's why, General, if I may, that is why we are also rebalancing our forces towards the northern borders. Pakistan is not a threat. Pakistan may be an irritant. It's China we need to be prepared to deal with all along our borders from Arunachal Pradesh to the Karakoram Heights. That is exactly what our focus needs to be in terms of infrastructure and capacity building, sir.
Okay, look, no enemy should be taken as a pushover, and no enemy should be glossed under saying that, Pakistan is only an irritant. We have to be conscious of the fact that there is a collusion. They do exercises in the air with China. They do exercise. Sea Guardian is going on recently in Northern Arabian Sea where simulated exercises are on. So, there is a collusion which is apparent, and we have to be careful from both fronts. The rebalancing naturally has gone through an immense appreciation exercise, which gives us which balance to be maintained and how the balance is to be maintained. So let's grant it to the people who have done this exercise an appreciation that they have waded the threat across from Gilgit-Baltistan, LOC and international border on the western front and also the northern front, and they will balance things.
So do you have any expectations from the 10th round of talks? Will China move forward, or in your appreciation, now that we are out of the South Bank, they will dilly-dally, General?
I'm not in the astrology game to predict about the Chinese. I agree with what the Honorable Ambassador said. Ambassador Vishnu Prakash was absolutely right in saying that you can't guarantee. He's an cunning enemy. He's unreliable. There is gross amount of distrust. Firstly, we have to assure the verification of the areas which have been disengaged, and then start working. And as what happened in the course of 8 rounds. How many rounds of talks take place to further move towards the other areas? Okay, only time will tell.
Oh, absolutely. But we will continue to track that story very, very closely as our forces strengthen themselves in Ladakh and in Arunachal Pradesh and other friction points with China along the LAC. A quick break at this stage, but don't go anywhere. On the other side, we will tell you about this joint India-US exercise, Yudhabhyas, that's currently underway in the Thar Desert. Details coming up. Stay with us.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.